Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast. The P.A.S. Report provides an honest analysis on the critical issues that matter to you without the biased media filters. Here's your host, Professor Nicholas Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the P.A.S. Report Podcast. Here's your host, Nick Giordano, and today I am going to take a deep dive into the Great Biden cover-up, because corruption and abuse of power, they pose a mortal danger to any free society, particularly when they are so blatant, they're left unchecked, and those in power don't even care to hide it anymore. The implications are far-reaching if we allow this to continue. It compromises our national security. It undermines trust in our institutions. And we, the people, are the ones that get exploited because of it. The survival of any country depends on the faith of its citizens in its institutions. When nearly half the country has lost this faith, how can our nation survive? To those on the left who dismiss the Biden family corruption scandal as nothing more than a right-wing conspiracy theory, I urge you to wake up, and wake up now, because a free society cannot stand when so many feel our institutions have been fully corrupted and weaponized. The Biden cover-up goes much deeper than just peddling influence. We are not talking about some local government inspector taking an envelope of cash from a contractor so that they could get a government contract. This is much bigger than that, and we are talking about our institutions, the swamp, openly targeting political opposition to push a political agenda. It illustrates how corrupt and brazen our officials have become. Accountability is essential in the United States. I call for it every single week because we are seeing failures on multiple levels, and we need to have a high expectation of our public officials. We need an expectation of transparency, and we need the expectation that they're going to serve in the best interests of we the people. Too many in power have betrayed our trust, and they use their position to seek more power and influence, pushing a political agenda that the country does not want. And this is how the fabric of a free society begins to unravel. In this episode, I am going to explore two important developments that have emerged in the Biden family corruption scandal, and it's not like you've heard about them, because God forbid the media actually reports on these things. The first is how 51 former intelligence officials knowingly lied to sway the 2020 election at the direction of the Biden campaign. So if you want to talk about election interference, that's election interference. The second is a much more serious allegation. And it's an allegation against some officials, including the Attorney General himself, Merrick Garland, who is being accused of obstructing justice into the ongoing investigation into Hunter Biden's shady business deals. We are learning this from a whistleblower. If these whistleblower allegations are true, the media cannot cover it up. They are no longer able to sweep this under the rug, and I will expose the thorough corruption within our institutions, reveal the truth that the media industrial complex and the establishment don't want you to know. And you need to stay tuned, because there are far-reaching implications. I'm going to break it all down in this thought-provoking episode. Before I get into it, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Go to the PAS Report website, pasreport.com. Sign up for the newsletter and share this episode with family and friends and on social media. Now, before I get into the Biden cover-up, obviously the big news is Tucker Carlson getting ousted from Fox News. And this reverberated on Monday. Went out, the news broke after the episode went out where I interviewed Steve Deese, which was a fascinating conversation. So I suggest everyone checks out my interview with Steve Deese. It was a great interview. But the news of this story is huge. It's huge. And I don't know exactly what's going on. We haven't really found out all the particulars of this. I do believe that sooner or later we will know exactly what took place, what actually led to this. There are some people that are speculating that he was ousted because of the Dominion settlement, but I don't know how true that is. I don't think there's much legs to that, considering why wouldn't Fox just announce it? You know, the sooner Fox gets this story out of the headlines, the better off it is for them that they can move past it. The more speculation that's out there, the more lifespan the news story has, the more likely the news cycle will continue covering this, because it's huge. It's bombshell. You know, and the calculation that Fox is making, I don't know what they're necessarily thinking. The reality is that they've had to make a calculation that they could overcome this. This is huge because Tucker Carlson was the biggest draw on Fox News. And so the question is, did Fox News make this decision looking at what happened with Bill O'Reilly, right? So they terminated Bill O'Reilly. Nobody thought O'Reilly could be replaced. He was ultimately replaced by Tucker Carlson, and Fox News recovered. People trusted Tucker Carlson. Well, now that Tucker Carlson is out, the question is, are Fox News viewers going to leave that network and go to other programming? Where's Tucker Carlson going to go? Will Fox be able to recover from this? You know, the main difference, I think, from Bill O'Reilly to Tucker Carlson, when Bill O'Reilly was terminated, there was still a certain loyalty that the viewers had towards Fox News. They still had a huge following. Ever since former President Trump and the election of 2020, obviously there has been a split between the loyalties of Fox News. And there are many people that stayed with Fox simply because of Tucker Carlson. So how this affects Fox News' bottom line over the long term, I can't answer that question. And I can't answer the question of what's next for Tucker Carlson, but it certainly was a shocking development. There is no doubt. And sooner or later, we're going to find out exactly what happened, what led to this. But it is no doubt a loss. I mean, we're going to hear from Tucker Carlson again. The reality is he's going to end up somewhere, and he could start his own platform if he wants to. So we will hear from him again. However, it's one less voice, a strong voice, a powerful voice that actually says what a lot of people are thinking. And Tucker is a very talented individual, and I know he'll be fine. So all the best to him. We'll see what happens with Fox News. I'll be interested to see what goes on there. But jumping to the more important story of the mass corruption that we have witnessed, I want to talk about what is going on within our political system, the absolute weaponization of our institutions. And I want to start with Tony Blinken, the current Secretary of State, and the 51 intelligence agents, the former intelligence officials that signed a letter in October of 2020 stating that the Hunter Biden laptop was nothing more than Russian disinformation. Because this is truly shocking on every level. But it's not a surprise. I mean, I called out the fraud when it first was perpetrated. I knew these former intel officials were full of crap. So it's not shocking. But now that we have total verification that it was all a lie, it was all BS, it's something that people need to wake up and see. Now, before I get into exactly what's going on, I do want you to take a listen to what Chuck Schumer said. And Chuck Schumer said this shortly after President Trump won the election in 2016. But I want you to take a listen to what he said, and then I want you to keep in mind what he said as I go through this.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this. From what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them.
Keep that in mind as we learn more about who is behind the creation of the statement. And you won't be shocked to learn it was the Biden campaign themselves. The Biden campaign was the one that organized it. You have the House Judiciary Committee and the Intelligence Committee looking into the origins of this letter. And they found that none other than Anthony Blinken, now the Secretary of State, but in 2020 he was working on the Biden campaign, he had a role in organizing the letter as part of the effort to discredit the laptop story, as part of the effort to discredit the Biden crime family syndicate. Michael Burrell, a former deputy director and acting director of the CIA under President Obama, wrote this in a statement. The idea wasn't originally his, though. In an interview with the committees, Burrell was asked how the statement came about, how it came about that the Russian laptop was disinformation. And he said this took place on October 17, 2020, right? That story broke 3 days later. After the laptop story broke in the New York Post, Burrell received a call from Blinken. And according to the committee, Blinken's call was couched as a fact-finding mission, as he was gathering information. He wanted to know what Morell's reaction was to the Post story. However, this set the chain of events in motion because it was Tony Blinken that planted it in his mind that it was Russian disinformation. In fact, he emailed Morell a few articles alleging that the laptop was Russian disinformation. Now, here's what you need to know. It's not like these intelligence officials were just duped. Oh, others are reporting it's Russian disinformation, so that's what we're going to run with. That's not the way it actually works. Understand that all these former officials still are very well connected. Many of them still have their security clearances. Many of them act as consultants for the government. They act as consultants for businesses. And they easily could have picked up the phone to contact John Ratcliffe over there at the ODNI, they could have contacted the CIA director, and they could have found out. In fact, I would guarantee you that some of these intelligence officials did exactly that. I would guarantee it. In addition, some former officials still receive intelligence briefings about what's going on around the world because if something were to happen, they may need advice. The officials currently in place may need advice. So the idea that this was all innocent and, they thought it was Russian disinformation and that's why they put the letter out there, it's all a lie. And we see this in the Q&A between Congress and Jim Jordan and Michael Morell when you have, and I'll just read it. Question, but prior to Secretary Blinken's call, you did not have any intent to write this statement. Morell answers, I did not. Okay, so his call triggered it. Morell's answer, yes, it did. What was the intent of the statement? Morell's answer, there were two intents. One intent was to share our concern with the American people that the Russians were playing on this issue, and two, it was to help Vice President Biden. You wanted to help Vice President, why? Because I wanted him to win the election. You wanted him to win. That's why? Yes, sir. Now understand that this was huge. 3 days later, President Biden used this letter as a defense during the last debate.
President Trump,
I have to respond to that.
Please,
because look,
very quickly.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And that's exactly what. Is this where you're exactly going?
This is where he's going.
These former intelligence agents, they gave enough cover to President Biden. They gave enough cover to the media to squash the story, to make it look like a conspiracy theory. This is a serious matter. Now, I don't necessarily blame Secretary of State Tony Blinken. He was part of the campaign. He was doing this because, hey, dirty tricks get played in campaigns. We understand that. We know that. This is politics. Politics is a blood sport. However, I do expect our former intelligence officials to conduct themselves above reproach. I do expect them to be honest brokers, but they're not. They're all a bunch of frauds. That's why. They're all a bunch of corrupted frauds that don't care. They want to push narratives. They want to push an agenda. And it was all because they didn't like Trump. They didn't feel that he was worthy on holding the office. It doesn't matter what the American people thought. See, you're the peasant class, so you don't matter out there. They feel the American people made a mistake in 2016 and that they were the ones that have to correct it. That's why they did dozens of investigations into the former president. That's why they tried to undermine his entire administration. And here was their opportunity to make sure that the laptop story never gained traction, because they knew that if it did, that there would be many, many, many Democrats that may have been turned off, that may not have gone to the polls, that may not have voted. So it tells you everything you need to know about who these frauds really are. And that's why I call them, the self-anointed guardians of democracy, because they're constantly preaching about holding up democratic values, about fighting for democracy, preserving democracy, yet they will do everything in their power to destroy democratic principles and then rebuild it the way they see fit in an authoritarian mold. They don't want the people's input. They don't care what people have to think. And it's because the system and the institutions have become corrupted. Every single one of these 51 former intelligence officials should be held accountable for their actions. They should not be allowed to work on any type of contracts with the government. They should not be able to serve as consultants, raking in millions of dollars each and every year. They have proven themselves to the American people. But it goes beyond that, because it's not just about former intelligence officials. It's also about the current officials that we have in place. Understand, again, it was Tony Blinken that was the one that planted the seeds for this letter. The same Tony Blinken that was working at the Penn Biden Center where the classified information was stored, the same Tony Blinken working at the Penn Biden Center where millions of dollars in donations to UPenn went. They're all in it together, right? I mean, imagine if China actually reveals information, they could probably destroy the Biden family if they wanted to. And it shows. Where's the accountability? Where is the outrage? Not from Republicans and conservatives. Of course we're going to be outraged. Of course we're going to use this, because we were labeled as conspiracy theorists. We were labeled as these far right-wing lunatics for bringing up this whole idea of the laptop story, for bringing up the idea of the Biden family business. Yet all the evidence was there. How long are you on the left going to deny it? How long are you going to bury your heads in the sand? How long are you going to sit there and defend the indefensible? Never once did I ever call for an investigation into Trump to be halted. I called it political. I said they were politically motivated investigations, that they were looking to bring down the former president. But never once did I say that they should stop investigating. There's been well over a dozen investigations into the former president while he was president and when he left office. And there's nothing there. Obviously, that's clear. Or else you wouldn't give him what BS charges that you did here in New York State under Alvin Bragg, Soros-backed DA. Yet we can't even have real investigations into Biden. So this is what you're going to support out there to all you on the left? And it goes worse than that. It gets much worse than that, because Hunter Biden is being investigated, but unfortunately we have government officials that are actually hamstringing that investigation, that are actually running interference for that investigation. And I just want you to consider, we're going to take a quick break. But when we get back, I want to explore why the Attorney General is now coming under pressure. Because a whistleblower has come forward. I'll explain it after the break. Hang tight. We'll be right back. Listen up, P.A.S. report audience. Experts say that China is hoarding a massive amount of food. They're soon going to have over 2/3 of the globe's corn reserves, over half its rice reserves, and over half its wheat reserves. But when asked about it, China lies. And one expert says that they, of course, will never admit to doing something like that. Well, what does China know that we don't? When it comes to the global food shortages, China is the canary in the coal mine. And you have to understand, China is the world's #1 food importer. They rely on the rest of the world to keep their people fed, so they can't afford to mess up. There'll be riots, civil panic, or even worse, when over 1 billion people can't eat, it's going to create a crisis for them. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for Americans like me and you? Food shortages. That's why it's a smart idea to stock up on a kit of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriot survival food kits. It's hand-packed in the United States. The kits are compact, stack easily. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and I can attest to that because I use 4 Patriots, and their 5-star reviews on the website rave about the flavor and taste. Right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriot survival food by typing in the code P.A.S. at checkout. Just go to 4patriots.com, use code P.A.S. to get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriot survival food. That's 4patriots.com. Use code PAS. Welcome back, everyone. And now moving on to the next story, the next big development is an IRS whistleblower complaint. So Hunter Biden is being investigated, particularly by the Treasury Department, for possible tax avoidance from the Biden family business. Now, here is what the Attorney General said back in March when it comes to the Hunter Biden investigation. Take a listen.
Steps has the Justice Department taken to determine the truth and accuracy of information provided? Congress and the American people, I think, have a right to know.
I have pledged not to interfere with that investigation, and I have carried through on my pledge.
So that's what the Attorney General testified to, but it turns out that may be a lie. An IRS whistleblower has come forward, and I'm going to read his complaint to you. Quote, I represent a Korea IRS criminal supervisory special agent who has been overseeing the ongoing and sensitive investigation of a high-profile controversial subject since early 2020 and would like to make protected whistleblower disclosures to Congress. Despite serious risks of retaliation, my client is offering to provide you with information necessary to exercise your constitutional oversight function and wishes to make the disclosures in a nonpartisan manner to the leadership of the relevant committees on both sides of the political aisle. My client has already made legally protected disclosures internally at the IRS through counsel to the U.S. Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration and to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General. The protected disclosures, 1, contradict sworn testimony to Congress by senior political appointee. 2, involve failure to mitigate clear conflicts of interest in the ultimate disposition of the case. And 3, detail examples of preferential treatment and politics improperly infecting decisions and protocols that would normally be followed by Korea law enforcement professionals in similar circumstances if the subject were not politically connected. Some of the protected disclosures contain information that is restricted by statute from unauthorized disclosure to taxpayer information. My client would like to share the same legally protected disclosures with Congress. Okay? So Merrick Garland lied. He is the person that they're talking about that has now been revealed. And he lied. He is now running interference for the Biden family. He is the one that is trying to protect Hunter Biden, because understand that if Hunter Biden begins to get scrutinized, if he gets exposed, it brings wider exposure to the entire Biden family network. What are we talking about? 9 family members that were enriched because of President Biden and his influence? It was a money-making scheme. That's what's going on, and the Department of Justice is now trying to cover it up. So it's never the crime, it's always a cover-up. That's what brings down everyone. It really is amazing. You would think that at this point people would get that, but they can't, because they're egotistical narcissists. And I just want you to think about the Biden administration again. This isn't about me being a conservative and President Biden's a Democrat and I just want to bring him down. This is about the corruption within the system. So you now have the Department of Justice that's going out there running interference into the Hunter Biden investigation. They've had the laptop for several years and nothing has happened from it. You have the FBI that went out to chase down Ashley Biden's diary. Now, I don't care. It might not be right that Ashley Biden's diary was stolen, okay? I'm not justifying that. I'm not endorsing that. I'm not supporting that. But that is a local law enforcement matter. That is a local theft. So why is the FBI going around acting as the president's personal police force to track down Ashley Biden's diary, kicking in the door of James O'Keefe and others? That's not the way the system is supposed to work. So why did they do that? It's not just the Department of Justice. It's not just the FBI. Let's look at the Secret Service. Hunter Biden and his, I don't know, is she the sister-in-law? Is she his girlfriend? I mean, who knows? But she ended up throwing away his firearm. And the Secret Service retrieved the firearm, but they also went to the gun store that Hunter Biden purchased the firearm from. Now, in the paperwork, Hunter Biden violated federal law by knowingly lying on the firearm application and stating no, that he has no addiction to any type of narcotics or anything like that. Now, that's a violation of federal law. The Secret Service attempted to get those documents from the store owner. Now, the store owner wouldn't turn it off because legally, by law, the store owner is required to keep all the documents pertaining to firearm applications. So he wouldn't give it to the Secret Service. But just knowing that the Secret Service went to his place of business to get those documents, well, you now have the Secret Service that was implicated in trying to cover up another Biden crime. You could try and dispute me on this, but I challenge anyone on the left, where am I going wrong? What am I saying that's wrong? I'm not exaggerating. I'm not manipulating anything. This is all public information that is out there, but nobody knows about it. And why don't they know about it? They don't know about it because our media is corrupt, because our media wants to protect this guy. In fact, if you do a Google search and you say, read IRS whistleblower complaint. Well, first, if you put in read whistleblower complaint, you're going to see Trump's name everywhere in the whistleblower complaint about him and his call to Zelensky with Ukraine. So if you narrow it down a little bit more and type in read IRS whistleblower complaint, you're going to get complaints from like years ago that have nothing to do with anything. You have to be specific when you're doing the search. Now, if you type in read whistleblower complaint regarding Hunter Biden, then it will come up. But it really is astonishing that even you have big tech covering the tracks, right? I mean, this is a news story that's worth talking about, even if you are supportive of the Democrats. It's certainly newsworthy to expose this. And yet the headlines don't appear at the top of the search. That's insanity. And they haven't covered it at all. So people need to be aware of what's really going on. They need to be aware of how thoroughly corrupt the system is. The system will not be able to sustain this for long. And when it all comes crashing down, it is going to be you and I that get screwed. It's going to be the ordinary American that gets screwed. Democrats should be just as outraged as I am. Because guess what? I want to hold everyone to the same standard. I don't care if they're Democrat, Republican, progressive, conservative. It makes no difference to me. Everyone should be held to the same standard. But right now, that's not what's taking place. And you have people in government that are using their positions of power only to increase their power, only to push a political agenda. And our institutions have become fully corrupted and weaponized. At the same time, these developments are breaking. What do we see? We see the president announcing that he's going to run for re-election. Well, let's just hope the people are better informed this time during the 2024 presidential race than they were in 2020. Let's hope that people could see through the BS. Let's hope that people could see how openly corrupted the swamp is, and how they openly target political opposition. It really is amazing, because when you look at everything that's taken place, when it came to President Trump, all the controversies surrounded his personality. That's what all the controversies were about. It wasn't about policy. It was about personality. Yet when you look at the Biden family, there is corruption. There's absolute corruption. When you look at our institutions, you see the clear abuses of power. And that is a much bigger deal. And it would be really nice if we introduce accountability back into the system, because people do need to be held accountable. People do need to be terminated. People do need to be charged. They need to be prosecuted, because only then will we be able to get rid of the rot and begin to fix our institutions, so that not just conservatives have faith in the institutions, but all Americans have faith in the institutions. Now, if you found the content of this episode informative, please give the P.A.S. Report a 5-star rating. Take 30 seconds to write a review on any podcast platform that allows it. And share this episode with your family and friends and on social media. As for Monday's episode, I got a great interview lined up, so make sure you tune in. And I want to thank you for joining me today. I'll be back on Monday with another great episode of the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report Weekly Roundup Podcast.
Have a good one. Bye.
Be sure to rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Also, visit PASreport.com and follow us on Twitter at PAS Report.